welcome to this review of the Harley Benton TE-20HH standard series guitar. Just to go through the boring specs you get at the beginning, it is a T-style guitar with a basswood body, maple neck, rosacea fretboard, painted in all black, hardware is all black, 2 humbuckers, toggle switch, a 3-way toggle switch, master volume and master tone. The neck profile is a modern C with a nut width of 42mm, 22 frets, and that's about it. That's all the important stuff out of the way. I wanted to review this because I've been thinking about the kind of beginner approach to guitar. Now, a lot of the videos and kind of content that I create is kind of geared towards people that have been playing for a while and kind of know the sorts of sounds that they're playing for. So it's for kind of moderate players and upwards, never for kind of true beginners. So I wanted to kind of at least try and start addressing kind of that gap in my content. So I thought I would start with a very affordable guitar, and one that is quite eye-catching and very unusual. The kind of big things that kind of really stand out about this guitar, to me at least, is the fact that at the moment at least, it is £85, and that's just blowing my mind. The things that really stand out to me about this guitar is the fact that it's so cheap at 85 quid for a beginner level guitarist. It's really quite appealing to kind of like lay claim to really trying to get your stamp on developing your own kind of style with guitar, and to do it in a pretty inexpensive way. Of course, from the Thomann website, you can get it with as a kind of a kit with an amp, a stand, a strap, and so on. But I've just bought the guitar on its own because I don't need the other things that come with it. It really did stand out as kind of an all-black guitar that's kind of quite appealing to, again, certainly beginner level guitarists. But for me, as a Manson guitar player, and the Manson guitars that I have, they're in matte black as well, so it kind of blends in really well. And to go even further, in the kind of like the Muse guitar cover community, I guess, I have a feeling that this might be quite desirable, just because it would tick a lot of those boxes, at least visually, and a bit fundamentally as well. Visually, because it's a T-style body and it's all black, so it kind of ticks those boxes straight away. The other kind of more substantial ones is because it has two humbuckers in both the neck and the bridge position to allow you to get those kind of big full tone kind of sounds that you want. Big distortion, big riffs, humbuckers are quite best for that. Arguably a P90 is going to be able to kind of tick those boxes as well, but for a lot of those kind of like big riff single coils just can't really move the kind of tone that you really kind of need it to. So for a really, really inexpensive kind of guitar, this does kind of tick a lot of the boxes. With it being a beginner level guitar, it of course does a lot of good things that you want it to, that I've just covered, but of course it does have some weak points too. The most significant weak point that I've found so far, only having had this guitar for about a day, is that the tuning pegs, the machines, are not great. In terms of like, you can turn them for a while, get no change in the string tension, then all of a sudden it changes it dramatically. It's not a smooth change as well, it's quite juddery. It's not brilliantly accurate, but for a first-time guitarist, that's not so important in terms of tuning stability. This is something that you actually might want to kind of lean into to kind of really get your head around tuning and what strings should sound like, so you can use it or frame it in a way that it's actually quite beneficial for you to train your ear and tune yourself to what your strings and your notes really should sound like. But with that in mind, after a while, when you start to get your head around it, you might want to think about changing these, and I would strongly suggest that you do if you were to get this guitar. It's not a difficult job at all to do. You need to take the strings off, undo all these screws, remove the whole thing in one go. It comes out after unscrewing some of the screws in the back here, and then install some new tuning machines. I would just encourage you to go out and do your own research on the sort of tuning machines that you'd want to go and get and replace with these. I personally would go for some like Goto ones, but they might be really expensive if certainly you are a first-time guitarist. But you might want to consider going for locking tuners, just to kind of remove any sort of like tuning stability issues. And with locking tuners, it makes string changing quite a lot easier. The other issues that I kind of found with this that are so far was that as the fretboard is painted, when you're playing after a while, as particularly if your hands do get a bit sweaty, the paint will come off ever so slightly, a very tiny amount, but then it will of course kind of stain your fingers black. Not really the biggest issue for me, and after a while of playing it, it'll kind of stop doing that. It's the kind of thing that you kind of enter yourself in for if you want to have an all black, all matte black painted guitar. I like the aesthetic of it, and after a while, when things start to wear out and kind of relic, if you will, I kind of like that look that you get, the kind of distressed look. Entirely up to you if you want to go for it. And the last note on the paint job is because it's a matte black finish, your fingerprints might show up like quite a lot easier. So if I just do this, it might show up. Not much of a big issue for me. I'm kind of alright with that. And then if you just get like a rag and clean it off, absolutely no problem. You probably get those sorts of things with the guitars as well. In terms of kind of the features of it and kind of what it can do, it's a really, it mostly is a really good solid guitar. I've been playing guitar for years. I've kind of come across a lot of terrible entry-level ones that just don't stay in tune at all, or ones that just sound terrible, or where it comes with the strings just flying all over the place and kind of buzzing on various frets. This guitar pretty much doesn't have any of those issues. I've not changed any of the setup, I've not fiddled with the action or the truss rod or anything, and the intonation is pretty much spot on. There is only one slight bit of fret buzz on the 4th fret. Other than that, all the strings and all the notes sound really clear, and it's a really enjoyable guitar to play, certainly for a beginner, and even a kind of amateur upwards kind of guitarist would go, there's a lot of good features about this. Kind of makes me feel a lot better having actually paid money for this, out of my sheer curiosity, but it's quite an interesting and exciting guitar to kind of play with. And kind of reminds me when I kind of first started out playing guitar with my first guitar. I had a lot of issues with it, and maybe I'd have wished for something more like this. Certainly would have been a lot more interesting. But that's kind of like where I am overall with it. Let's just kind of dive deep into the kind of various kind of sounds with this and what it can do. So let's do that. just playing with some kind of more distorted sounds, it does kind of have a lot more of a chunky and a really good kind of grasp of doing distorted sounds. Really good for kind of songs and bands like Muse, particularly kind of the more heavier ones that they have. It would go really well for kind of that kind of big, chunky, kind of generic sound that anyone would really get, and the sort of things that beginner guitarists would really kind of want to go for. In my opinion, it is great for that. So that's the big kind of tones kind of sorted and looked at, decent enough. Let's just kind of check out what it's like with doing kind of big muff tones, fuzzy tones that are kind of geared towards more riffs. Let's try it out. It sounds great to me. What about things that are a little bit more heavier? I would say it can do riffs pretty decently. Maybe not as bright as what you might expect on a more higher end guitar, but it's 85 quid. Give it a break and it was pretty good. What about clean stuff? Let's try out some clean tones. See what I mean about some of the tuning issues? Go up, then you have to come like way down. It's okay, it's a little bit chunky, but that's kind of down to how humbuckers work. It's not as clean and precise as what you might get with a single coil, but that's kind of the compromise you make unless you want to modify this guitar. Let's change things up now by comparing the Harley Benton to a Manson. I'm kind of framing this guitar as a kind of maybe an alternative to a Manson, or a cheap alternative to kind of aiming for that Matt Bellamy sound, or even just that Matt Bellamy look. So let's compare it to my Manson Evo with XY pad. Maybe a bit of an unfair comparison. This guitar is $2,500 compared to 85 quid. There might be some things that that guitar just can't do. Things that we're not going to compare it to is the XY pad. That's just something that we are not going to look at, and we are not going to use the sustainer because that's really unfair, because that guitar doesn't have one. This is an optional feature for this guitar, so we're not going to be looking at what the sustainer does. We're just going to be having a look at this guitar hardware wise, how it feels, how it plays, the pickup that comes with, and the neck pickup just as a neck pickup. Let's just manage your expectations there. So let's have a look. It's obviously a lot sharper, brighter, stronger, but that might be down to the pickups, maybe the bodywork. I don't really know, but this guitar has a lot more higher end stuff put into it that the Harley Benton just doesn't have. But to a beginner, does that really matter? Is that really detectable? I would say not. It can kind of contend quite well in terms of how hard it can hit, how well it can chug. It's a good comparison. Interestingly, it might not be very fair. It's certainly not very fair. But where it counts, it can certainly do the vast majority of what it needs to do. In terms of the feel, which is quite difficult to convey over a video, the Manson hands down just feels a lot better. The neck is a lot smoother. It's a lot faster. The The hardware tuning, there are absolutely zero issues with tuning stability here. It's tip top. The hardware down here, though, on the other side of it, does what it needs to do. The intonation is there. Obviously, with such a good guitar like this, you kind of want it to be, but the intonation on the Harley Benton is there. I've not changed any of it since it came out of the box when it came from Germany. It's not been changed. It's really good, and there's no intonation problems, there's no tuning issues kind of really down that side of things. The only issue with the Harley Benton is that the tuning heads need to change. Same number of frets. Fret access is virtually the same kind of body to kind of really look at. It's a good comparison with a lens of how cheap can you get it, how accessible can it be, and where's a good place to start. If you are a beginner guitarist and you want to kind of sound like Muse and you want to get to this level of having a guitar or playing a guitar, that'd be a good comparison, good place to start. So in conclusion with this guitar, it's quite impressive. It's certainly eye-catching, which is kind of why the reason that I ended up kind of going for it. It really did stand out. Kind of ironic with it being kind of matte black, you might think it's trying to hide, but it kind of really did stand out. And also the price kind of really helped it stand out as well. I kind of bought this in a way to kind of think this would be quite funny to do, but it's actually quite an interesting guitar. Because it can do so much for kind of so little that it's offering. The T-style body is kind of the oldest kind of electric guitar out there. It's very iconic, it's very well known. It's really simple. With 22 frets you can do quite a lot with it. With the kind of simple neck, you can really get your hand around it. For kind of various styles you can certainly get a lot out of it. If you're just going to be doing kind of 3-chord rock, that'll work really great for it. But if you want to kind of do it more venture out curve higher at the neck can certainly accommodate you up there for sure. I imagine that it's going to go down for a lot of young beginner guitarists just because of the way it looks. I mean, let's just admire it for a second. It is certainly a good looking guitar. I've never seen a guitar quite like this before. What I'm going to be doing with this guitar moving forward from kind of today at time of recording is not let it kind of stay as it is. I'm going to be using this as a modding platform to experiment with maybe different pickup combinations, kind of changing up hardware. So I'm kind of really going to put my money where my mouth is when I say let's change out the tuning pegs and see what we can do with the pickup arrangement. I'm going to be putting in a lot of effort to this guitar to make it sound maybe as good as it can. Not really kind of big plans right now. Going to be some subtle things. I don't think I'm going to change the pickups, or at least for a while. If we're going to see what I can do on kind of a really small basis, maybe report back, because I do think for the price point that this is, it offers us a good modding platform. And if you are going to be playing guitar, you might want to play for a while, hopefully, and you want to see what you can really get out of such a cheap guitar. So, you know, bear with me on that. So overall, with this guitar, I'm really impressed with it. It's got some very good points to it with a few minor setbacks. You can get a lot out of it. If you want to go for that Muse kind of guitar style, this is a great guitar to kind of go for, a really good alternative to what is out there currently, with certain guitars that I guess many people watching this video right now might have their kind of mind on what they might want to get if they want to go for that Matt Bellamy guitar sound. This might be a good contender, a good alternative, and at £85, it's a bit of a steal.